All right, here we go. Oh, I got to turn that down. 1 second. Let me turn that off. And let me turn this on. Let me see, who's missing? Tangier's missing.
Philip. No, Tangier left.
Tangier left. Let me, I gotta do something here real quick. So, some people may have been wondering why I scheduled this event for today at 1 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. Final Cut Pro 10.8 has just arrived. That's why I scheduled it. I thought it would be out at 2, but I knew it was going to be out today. Let me see where the heck Tangier went. There he is. I'm going to assign him to number 4.
Yeah, don't know how.
There you are.
It's little glitches.
Not
little
sure how
glitches.
I got disconnected, but hey, I'm back.
Yeah, I think that was Brett. It's one of his new plugins. He
What?
he
What?
gets rid of competition.
It's all your fault, Brett.
So I'm still waiting. I'm still going back and forth on the App Store, and I don't see it live. But I knew 10.8 was coming out today because I have faith in Apple and the Final Cut Pro team. Now, well, I do. I mean, they said, listen, they're so funny when they announce last November to all of us who were there at the Creative Summit. All of us were there. They said it'll be out later this month. Well, it came out on November the 30th. This time, they said, they didn't say Final Cut Pro 10.8 was going to come out later this spring. They didn't mention the time frame for 10.8, but they said Final Cut iPad 2 and the Final Cut camera app will come out later this spring. But I said they can't do those and not do 10.8 at the same time. That would be ridiculous. They have to keep somewhat, release parity there. Yeah. So
Smart man. You were right on.
Mm-hmm. There we go. So what are we're going to, obviously we can't talk about 10.8 specifically since none of us have used, well, some of us maybe not have used it. I haven't used it yet, but I keep doing the refresh. Let me show you where.
Yeah, did
I?
Yeah, because it's updating in the App Store. There it is.
I keep doing this. It says keep saying open. Keep saying open.
Mine says update.
I have a motion update. I have a motion update that just showed up after a refresh. Yep.
There you go.
That's it. Motion 5.8.
Is anybody still using Motion? I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding.
I still use it.
But doesn't it seem like, speaking of updates for Final Cut, but it doesn't seem like Motion hasn't got much attention over the last 13 years? I mean, just compared to Final Cut, it's just a little bit. What do you think, Phil?
It actually has been getting regular attention because pretty much every new visual feature that comes to Final Cut has to come to Motion first because they're built on the same Liquid Light engine, which was mentioned once at the Super Meet and then never mentioned again. So they are built on the same engine. So if you want to bring a feature to Final Cut, you basically have to bring that feature to Motion as well. You can't do one and not the other.
Oh,
which
really?
is why, yeah. It's the engine underneath is shared between them. And as I said, at the Super Meet when they pre-announced Final Cut well over 13 years ago, they referred to that as a Liquid Light engine. I think they were going sort of naming parity with Adobe at the time, and the way Adobe were naming their various Mercury engines and Mercury Transmit, etc. But we never heard of the Liquid Light engine again. But it is true that they share the same underlying image processing engine, which makes sense because why would you invent it twice?
Right. And the other thing is obviously Motion's used for the whole plugin architecture of Final Cut.
Yeah.
Is that exclusively? Is that exclusively? I mean, is there any other platform? Yeah.
No, there's no other way to get a plugin into Final Cut except for going through creating it as a Motion template.
So this is one of the main points when everybody talks about Final Cut on iPad versus Final Cut on the Mac, I have over 2,000 Final Cut plugins for the Mac.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
None of them are
How do you keep track of them all?
Well, that's one of the problems. That's one of the problems we need to take care of. None of them work on the iPad, and none of them are going to be ported over at this point to the iPad because, Philip, you might know the plugin architecture for the iPad version and the Mac version are completely different, right? It sure seems like it.
It would be. I would expect so. At the moment, there is no real plugin, not available APIs. There's no effects API for Final Cut for iPad. There's certainly no XML interchange for Final Cut for iPad. So at the moment, it is an island in and of itself that is only expandable by Apple. Whether or not they will expand that out so that we can add, more effects to it or workflows, I suspect that XML is not going to come to the iPad because the sort of workflows that XML supports and makes possible are not the sort of workflows that are likely to happen on an iPad.
Yeah.
Has anybody tried Chris Hawking's solution to get stuff from Final Cut onto the iPad? Sending a timeline over there, and it supposedly includes the plugins.
It worked for a little while, and then it stopped working, I believe.
Okay, I haven't tried it, but I kind of wondered what the interface. I need to play with that, but what was that called? What's that called?
Yeah, when he first brought that out way back a year ago when the iPad version was you can send it from the iPad to Final Cut, but getting it from Final Cut back to the iPad was the issue. Now, here's one thing. I got a new...
Yeah, he was sending it to the iPad.
Yeah, but that's not supported. It's there's a reason.
I think they stopped. I think they stopped it working. I'm pretty sure that no longer is available.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I said when Chris had that come out, I said I'd be surprised if they're going to let you do that. And they didn't let him do it on the App Store because they didn't problems or whatever. So
transfer toolbox.
Do not start me on the App Store and problems right now. We've been
we got
a lot for 2 weeks.
We got lots of comments. I'm going to bring these up here. I mean, we got dozens and dozens of comments right now. Countdown has started.
Oh, there you go.
Ripple Training has just released their 10.8 review on YouTube. Final Cut release has not been updated yet. Yeah, I knew it was coming out today. Listen, I'm not a gambling man, and I bet somebody on our Facebook group, they said, Richard, it's not coming out today. You've been talking about this for weeks. I said, I'll bet you a coffee. And then I put a link to my buymeacoffee.com, Richard Taylor. I said, I can, I'm not a gambling person. I'm just not that kind of a person, other than a coffee or something like that. And I was pretty confident it was coming out. And of course, here it is. Well, I still don't see it on my end yet, but
I just got compressor.
You were waiting.
Pardon?
You just
and
did
like
what?
I said, Dylan Bates' email just came out. I said moments ago that, right as we were getting going, said it's officially out. So I'm still refreshing.
Yeah, I'm refreshing.
They were waiting for Richard's birthday party. Yeah, they wanted to wait for the party.
Well, listen, we've been, we have our weekly Final Cut TV and coffee every Saturday morning. And I've been since they announced it on May the 7th, I think they announced it when at the iPad event.
Yeah.
So I've been
Your
saying,
voices.
okay.
Are you guys hearing that?
What?
No.
Are you guys hearing? Okay. I don't know. I'm having trouble hearing you.
Nope.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. It's registering on my meters. I'm not sure why. Yeah. So there we go. Just came through.
Yeah,
Where's my...
Mine
came
through about 3 minutes ago.
Update.
Netherlands has it.
Here we go.
Sounds good.
Let's see what else we have.
Update. I'm anxious to see what they're doing.
Here we go. There
is
it is.
Is that Apple calling you, Richard?
Yes,
they
That's my landline. Somebody wants to buy my house.
There it is.
Commando.
Official. You saw it live on the air right here on Final Cut TV Live. The update. Now, this is why I scheduled this event. I thought it was going to come out between 1 and 2 o'clock. So I figured we'll come out. Excellent. We'll come out and I figured I originally was going to do it 2 o'clock. That's going to be too late. Let's go back to 1 o'clock. And it came out at 1 o'clock. So there you go.
And
is it
compressors
out?
Mine
to all
said
three.
update earlier this morning.
Yes, it is. Let me.
Compressor,
Yeah,
all
Mine
three
said
motion
update
compressor.
earlier
and
this
Final Cut.
morning. Yeah, and the way they're handling color is going to be interesting. They're using AI to automatically work some of your color for you, and I think that's okay if you're just doing. I don't know, Philip. You and I have had this conversation. There's a certain amount of AI that I love, and then when it starts interfering with my brain and won't let me do what I want to do, usurps any of that, then I get a little bit nervous about that. But
I think
I've been getting ready for it.
I'd say with
What?
the AI color correction, it's more a case of the AI is going to do the color grading that I was never going to pay for anyway.
Well, it also is it's moving it actually into the inspector so you can see your changes as you're making them. I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to. Also, a new way of doing slow motion.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works, even
It's
if
an
you don't
improved
have
way,
the
right? It's an
Phil-
improved way.
Yeah, they're using AI
it's a-
to generate keyframes. I mean, not keyframes. Generate frames in between what would normally have been dropped. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be fun.
What do you think, Phil, about that?
Yeah, I mean it's a completely new AI, a new machine learning model that they've created for interpolation, which is going to probably do a much better job than the optical flow that we've been using. Simply because it just the way the AI tools work, they tend to have a more natural approach than the more algorithmic approaches that we've used previously.
Well, I
Pidgey,
think
you
the
wanted to
lack
say
of
something.
artifacts when you're moving to slow motion, if you've been using a camera that can't do in 20 frames and you want to slow-mo some of your media without getting artifacts, I think this new version that they're talking about, I think that would be wonderful to do that. So if I've got Chianti running track and I wasn't able to switch my speeds during the few seconds that I'm getting to the final finish line, then I can take Final Cut now and using their new version of optical flow and literally slow-mo it as he goes over the end. I think that would be really dramatic, and I'm going to try that later today, actually.
What about what's the other big feature? Oh, the auto color. They've improved.
Color
Yeah,
balance.
that's
They've
right.
improved
That's what
that
I was
somehow?
talking about. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
that's what you were
using
talking about.
Balance, contrast. Yeah.
and you can see it in the inspector. So when you're making your changes, AI is making those changes for you. You can see what it's doing and approve it and change it if you want to.
Yeah. That's
but,
why I felt like Philip, you said the quiet part out loud.
Which was what? What was the quiet part?
Philip, I love how Philip is really like super smart and can just boil things down. It's very practical. I love that about
he
Philip.
does.
He just says
But-
it probably wasn't something to the effect of it's going to do what a tool can do that I wasn't going to buy anyway. Something to that effect. I thought
I said it's going to do the color grading that I was never going to pay anyone to do anyway.
right. Oh gosh. As soon as you said that, I thought, can he say that? I mean, I know he can. But
Of course.
it makes sense.
Well, he'll say it even if he can't. We
Yeah.
love that, Philip.
Oh,
It is
that's
true.
that's who that is. I was wondering who this was. Southern's Barbecue? Patrick Southern.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
Patrick
Was
Southern.
that Patrick?
Yeah,
Hey, Patrick,
Southern
how's
here.
the baby?
hey.
How's the baby? How old is the baby now?
I said, who is Southern's
Graduating
Barbecue?
high school.
Yeah, probably. Jeez.
So this is a question. How does one refresh? You can look under your updates tab, but I do the search bar in Final Cut.
Command R.
Well,
That's
that's
Command R.
But I always get it faster by doing the search. To go to the search field, type in Final Cut Pro, and go there. That's how I get it much faster than if it shows up in my particular catalog of updates. I said honor before the 19th, so my fledgling career as a prophet is over. So I have to go on Facebook and see who owes me a coffee. Somebody owes me a coffee. And then I also there was somebody who came on X today this morning and said that, what did they say? Oh, Apple, look, it's official. Apple officially missed their deadline. They said it was going to be out, and I said, no, it's not official, and it's not a deadline. They didn't have any deadline for it. They just said it would be out at the end of spring. And I said, spring is here until today at 4:50 on the East Coast of the United States. Well, they made it at 1 o'clock, 3 hours and 50 minutes before before summer. So they once again made it. Now, this is very typical of Apple. Creative Summit last year, we all got to see a preview of 10.7. Later this month, well, everybody's saying, what's later this month? Well, it's the last day of the month. Later this month means the last day. They did the same thing when the Mac Pro came out at the WWDC in 2019. Later this year, well, it came out the last day before Christmas vacation. So the good question is, this person says updating now, and they said, where is Final Cut Camera? Good question. I haven't checked on that yet.
I'm pretty sure Final Cut Camera was in a different timeline, and it was not going to come out until later this year.
Yeah, it's not ready yet.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's an overlap between developing applications and editing, because clearly that the application is developed right up until the very, very last minute. Like an edit is continuing changing right up to the last point where it has to be abandoned because we're going to actually show it somewhere, or because the budget has run out.
Right.
So everyone works right to the very last minute, to the very last end of their deadline.
So
I have this vision of all the Final Cut users on a bus, and we're all going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? What cartoon was that?
Here's a couple of things that I've noticed this last year or so. The update numbers don't mean anything like they used to prior to 10.5, because, okay, we got 10.7, 10.7.1, 6 months later we got 10.8.
Yeah.
Okay, 6 months after 10.7 came out, we got 10.8 with only one tiny bug fix in December. Logic Pro went from 10.8 to 10.11 to 11 to version 11 in the same time frame. 6 months, it went from 10.8 to 11. So those numbers just don't really mean anything anymore. Not like they used to.
I feel like they're rushing to 11. Like they're trying to just kind of leapfrog and. And hopefully 11 is not subscription.
Oh, God.
No, 11 Final Cut 11 will be the completely rethought Final Cut based on AI from the very beginning. Foundational models are right at the beginning of Final Cut. A complete and absolute rewrite for a next generation, because we're already a year longer than Final Cut Classic lasted. So, and we only were told this was the foundation for the next 10 years. So, in one way of considering it, that's 3 years overdue for a rewrite.
Yeah.
Brett?
Yeah.
Logic Pro went from version 10.8 to 11, no subscription. I expect Final Cut Pro to do the exact same thing. Okay?
I do too. But
So the first thing is, I expect, since we got 10.8 in June, what happens 6 months from now? The Creative Summit happens 6 months from now. So Logic went from 10.8 to 11 in 6 months. And now we're at 10.8 on Final Cut Pro. They're not going to go to 10.9, I don't think. I think they're also going to go 11 plus or minus 6 months, which will be the Creative Summit. Now, we may not get it at the Creative Summit, but I think we'll at least see a preview.
When is Sequoia being released?
September, October, typically.
Because when you say that,
before the summer,
Richard, it makes me think of two things when you ask that question, Richard. One, when is Sequoia going to, and gosh, I really hope that Chris Hawking is working on, assuming that media, what is it, the media extension, which will allow Chris to do B-Raw in a different way, but more like the old Parium software we used to have, and other companies too. I hope that maybe we get to see at the summit some example of that actually being used in Final Cut. So we can get native B-Raw. I mean, I love B-Raw Toolbox, but
it's
media extension is
interesting
going to open up a lot.
That media extension framework was announced at WWDC in 2023, and then politely disappeared afterwards, only to reappear at WW24.
Right.
So they've been working on that for quite a while. But yeah, it's a new media extension framework that allows people to write an actual, what I would have called a QuickTime component in years gone by.
Sure.
A plug-in to the architecture that allows you to bring an extra format that wasn't otherwise supported. And that would bring it to the entire architecture.
That's what I'm hoping for.
We have at the moment, where there are plugins specific to Final Cut that will get.
I just got a message from somebody. Wait a second. Let me just check this out.
So Dylan Tangier, it looks like Dylan posted his 10.8 tutorial.
Yeah,
Yay, Dylan!
That.
Oh, good.
Philip, you had mentioned about Final 11, Final Cut 11. I mean, being completely rewritten and based on AI, and I would definitely agree. I also think I can't help but wonder. I just I think a couple of days ago watched something like this Raphael Ludwig about how Apple could dominate the creative market, and it's really interesting what you're talking about, Philip, and how that kind of ties into Final Cut. Kind of potentially CapCut nipping at its heels with all these very simple things it can do with AI. Now, I personally haven't used it that much, but when you said that, Philip, it made me think about that. Like, is how much of an impact will something like CapCut have an impact on the next major release of Final Cut? Not these small updates, but as we move forward with more AI technologies and simple things that CapCut can already do that Final Cut cannot do, maybe those are the kind of things we will see. Or maybe it'll only be the iPad, unfortunately.
I would definitely see more of those features moving into Final Cut for iPad. Although if you're starting to rethink an NLE from the ground up with the concept of making it AI assisted at every level, I'm not entirely sure what that's going to look like, because when they rethought Final Cut into Final Cut Pro 10, I didn't predict that was the way it would look. In fact, they started to rework it. That was not the way it looked. It was a relatively late in the process change of direction, and it changed the way a lot of people edit and a lot of people work, particularly with that. But it has now tended to be more the content creators than sort of the smaller professional film and TV markets that have favored Final Cut. Whether they would, I think the interesting thing is CapCut is for the non-editor, absolutely the non-editor, somebody who doesn't really want to even learn editing skills beyond just getting their job done, and they want as much assistance as they possibly can. I think that's drive the Final Cut for iPad market, because I see that as being very much just the sort of this very small step up from the CapCut customer. I mean, there could be a whole market open up if TikTok gets banned. Then doesn't their subsidiary CapCut get banned? So that could leave a real opportunity in the market if that were to go down that way.
Richard, do we want to talk to people about things that they need to do before they update? I'm a little concerned that some people are just throwing it in.
Number
Maybe.
one,
I'm seeing
back
that
up
too.
your
I'm
copy
noticing
of
that
Final
too.
Cut Pro. I've been talking about this for a week now. I said, now's a good time. Thank you for bringing that up, Serena. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, and make a duplicate copy of your libraries in another location just in case, because I know I'm in the middle of some huge projects. Everything that is integral to your projects that you're working on, back those up, put them in another location, and that's actually why I didn't update. I got the update sign signal earlier this morning, but I wanted to get everything ready.
So Final Cut Camera is indeed out. It's 2 people have said it's out. So
there you go. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm anxious to try that too. I sure hope that I know they have audio meters. I hope they support external pro audio like my DJI mic too. And I hope they have there are some other issues that even Blackmagic camera is the best camera app right now. It is so sophisticated, it's so good, and it's free. I use it all the time. Oh, I know what it is. So the Blackmagic camera app and the other camera apps can record ProRes log in all flavors of ProRes and H.264 and H.265. The current Apple camera app can only record it in ProRes HQ. That's the only option. So I hope the new camera gives you the option for multiple. Like I recorded a lot of times in ProRes LT rather than ProRes HQ, and So that was one of the other things.
I love I haven't tried it yet, but Tangier, I need to talk to you about this because I want to bring some to your classes. The new Cine Immersive camera from Blackmagic works with the Apple workflow.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to do that?
I'd love to. I'd like to give something, try something to get together. And
yeah, we'll do that.
So we have more evidence that that Apple and Blackmagic work together. Okay?
Yes.
This was a big announcement because they've done what were those Thunderbolt graphics things they did a few years ago? Blackmagic did one.
Their cards?
The
card
carriage.
What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, they work together then.
Carriage,
yeah, they work together then. Apple has
which part of Apple and which part of Blackmagic?
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point, Philip. But here's the thing: people always say, "Well, why isn't there ProRes RAW and why isn't there Black?" I don't know. I have no idea why that is. Maybe that'll be coming. But they've been working together for years. How many times have we seen an Apple presentation and they feature DaVinci Resolve? How many times they did it this last time again? And they're doing a new camera. Blackmagic is doing a new camera just for Apple Vision or the enhanced whatever that new 180-degree immersive video.
Cine immersive camera. Yeah, those are the ones I want to bring to Tangier's school. We're going to do an event there, hopefully.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So this.
Go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
This is exciting. I was fairly confident that today we were going to be on screen talking about Final Cut Pro 10.8, but I thought it was going to come out closer to 2 o'clock, so I figured I'd schedule it at 1 o'clock, but it came out at 1 o'clock, so no big deal. Now, one of the other things, I was prodding people who were on the Final Cut Pro beta team last week and this week. I started with the post that said, "Special today only. I will review your Final Cut Pro 10.8 tutorials for free." I said, normally it's $250, but today I'll do it for free.
You said someone took you up on it too. Who was that?
Yeah, I said one person took me up on it, but then I put out a graphic. That said, who's going to be the first to post Final Cut Pro tutorials? And I had a graphic that said who's on first with Final Cut Pro. So that was the second little poking I did. I'm pretty sure it's coming out.
Was it
Dylan?
Somebody said Dylan's got one.
Final Cut Bro Dylan right away. Like I got the email minutes ago, and he's right up on top on YouTube. So number one.
Ripple? He beat
And
Ripple.
Ripple, yeah, Ripple's is out. Yep.
Oh, it's out too? Okay.
Yeah, well, let me just do this real quick.
I'm working on mine right now.
Yeah.
I just saw that someone posted that they tested the slow-mo, and that was amazing. That's good to hear.
Yeah, what?
Oh, that's exciting. That is so exciting.
So
Who was that?
Find it. I'm trying to find it.
This is the graphic
Richard, why
that I
don't you
put
pull
up.
it up?
This is the graphic
Yeah,
that I put up. Who's on first?
I love it.
I put that up. I like, of course, when I get no response from these people that we know who's on the graph, obviously Ripple has an advanced copy. Dylan Bates has one. They don't respond because we're too close to the actual release time. They're embargoed until apparently 1 o'clock today, which just coincidentally happens to be the same time that we came on live. Isn't that a coincidence?
Oh,
So this
Dylan,
guy,
it's just us.
our friend says live multicam is for Final Cut for iPad only, according to the app. Yeah, that's what they said originally. Yeah. That's not a surprise. Now here's the thing. Final Cut for iPad is taking 4 sources, four iPhones or 4 iPads, streaming it live to the iPad, Final Cut for Multicam Live, and it's editing a local copy. It's not streaming it back out live. People are confused about that. It's not streaming it back out live, okay? With Ecamm Live, look what I have. I have 5 cameras right now. I can switch between them. I'm recording ISO versions of all the video, ISO audio, and I'm streaming it out live to YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. So I've been doing this for years, doing this thing for years. I can switch. Go ahead, Phil.
8 years ago, it was Switcher Studio. Ran a little app on a phone, then to the iPad.
Right.
So we were doing, just for my singing teacher, my vocal coach. We're doing low keys showcases for family and friends, and we were doing that 8 years ago, because we haven't really done one in 7. So that's not,
2019,
it's not new.
2019, you and Greg were using it in the booth at NAB for OWC Radio. We were switching.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah,
it
was
were doing
great.
It then too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
but it had some issues with the Wi-Fi networking when there was a crowd of people around.
Right.
That I never found a solution to. So I would presume that probably we're working with another 2 generations of Wi-Fi technology since then, and you're going to get a lot better performance, because the sort of issues that we would have would have been unacceptable in an Apple app on Apple with Apple ecosystem.
Absolutely. In 2016 at the Creative Summit, I did my first live streaming at that point, and I had an app. It was on the iPad called Sling Studio. And I did the same thing. I could switch live, I could record ISOs, but I could stream out to both Facebook and YouTube and stuff, but which this version of the Multicam Live can't do. It just records it locally. So I don't think they're going to be streaming, but who the heck knows? So I keep hearing about CapCut. When I interviewed LumaFusion at NAB, they told me something, and I heard about this from other people. CapCut, terms of service, they record your keystrokes, and they access your contact list. They access your contact list. You give them permission to access your contact list, and you give them permission to record your keystrokes. Anybody who's using CapCut, be aware of that. What were you going to say, Serena?
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm just saying bye to CapCut. Not going to do it.
I eliminated them from anything I have because of those two things. People don't realize that. And where's that information going? You have no control over it. Well, of course. I mean, obviously it's going to China. But recording your keystrokes, I don't give anybody permission to access my contacts. No. I protect all of you. Nobody's getting permission.
There's an app that I actually downloaded a couple of days ago called Incognito. Have you heard of that app, Incognito, or something like that? It found 111 trackers that were selling my data. Wow. And so and it tells you, it goes in and it removes everything. And there were a couple that wanted to talk to me before they would remove it, but 111 data brokers had gotten my information from a leak somewhere, and it just spreads like kudzu. And you wonder why sometimes your machine starts moving more slowly, or somebody makes a purchase that they're not supposed to make. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I'll try to find the name of that, and I'll send it to you, Richard. But yeah, I highly recommend you guys doing something like that. I'm glad I did.
So we have a comment. I joined a little late. Will this be available? Will I be able to watch later? Of course. Absolutely. It'll be up forever on YouTube. Oh.
Speaking of that, I revisited a I made 2016 era on how to just some Apple scripts that were triggered off keystrokes that would change the mode in a multicam switch and then change the angle. I was switching the Lunch with Philip and Greg at the time, and of course I had 3 audio angles and 2 video only angles, and I was getting RSI changing all of the modes all the time. And so I had and Serena had the same sort of use when you're coming up to doing your Zoom, and another friend had the same use for cutting a podcast. And I think maybe it's time to dig up this tutorial I wrote and put on FCP.co 8 years ago. Oh, problem with FCP.co. Anyway, trolled through the Wayback Machine actual archive of the list of tutorials, scrolled through page after page of the tutorials that are just based on time. Finally found the tutorial to discover that it in fact was just a reposting of a video tutorial that I had put on YouTube in my channel on YouTube. And I could have just gone straight there and found it. It needs updating, but it's going to come back in a little while.
It's like yesterday, I'm ringing my phone from my Apple Watch, right? I'm going, where's my phone? Where's my phone? And it was ringing, and it was actually in my back pocket.
Yeah, of course. I've had that happen before, for sure.
Yeah.
So
that app is Incogni, INCOGNI.com. Incogni. Okay. Do that.
Incogni. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want those people.
Oh, wow.
I don't want anybody accessing my contact list. I'm sorry. And I certainly don't want you recording my keystrokes. That's ridiculous. No, absolutely not. But CapCut, according to what LumaFusion and other people have said, that's part of their... You're agreeing to that when you install the app.
Yeah.
Okay. But, well, there's an opportunity to create a safe version of that. Like, somebody who values privacy.
Yeah.
Well, LumaFusion said they will never sell your data. Their terms of service is like 1 or 2 pages of some standard stuff. They say we commit to never selling your data. We're never going to make you agree to that stuff. Now, here's the thing about LumaFusion. First off, I got my new iPad Pro. I got the 13-inch 1 terabyte. I've been editing videos on it. It's really, really good. But LumaFusion is normally $29 one-time fee, but it goes on sale twice a year for $19.
Yeah.
Twice a year for $19.
Okay.
So.
Have you guys? I mean, how many of you guys have played with CapCut?
I did for a little while until I found out about that nonsense about them accessing your contacts and recording your keystrokes, Brett. Both of those. I don't care what the feature set is.
Yeah.
No, I'm not giving you permission to do that.
Yeah, I just had
only
to play
twice.
with it, and yeah, I played with it a little bit when I was releasing some alpha channel graphics elements type stuff, and I wanted to make sure they worked in there. And it's the text to the speech to text is impressive.
Yeah.
And the as far as I can understand, the effects, it's very social media based. Like if you get in there in the titles, you're scrolling down the titles, you're trying to find, okay, how many are there? And you don't realize it keeps loading more and more and more. It's coming off the it's not in the app. It's coming off of shared effects. So you can create effects, share them right in the app and all that kind of stuff, which is all very, maybe that's what, Final Cut needs to get, done, because LumaFusion's not doing that either, I don't think.
Well, LumaFusion is updated. They have a version 5 coming out this summer with a bunch of new stuff. So I'm not saying, I understand the appeal of CapCut. I just don't trust it. I don't trust it at all. It's one of the highest levels of distrust that I have for CapCut. I'm not giving them permission to access my contacts, and I am not giving them permission to record my keystrokes. Period. I don't care if it's the best video editor in the world. You're not going to get that from me.
It's
Yeah.
not a
Well,
long
they don't
form
have-
editor by any
They don't
means.
have-
It's just quick clips and that sort of thing. The layer stack doesn't work like a normal, you think Final Cut's weird,
Yeah.
compared to others. CapCut, like, you put a title in there, doesn't matter where it is in the layer stack, it's on top. Things like that. It's kind of
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
I've only used
Well,
it
they don't
twice,
have the
and that was
sanctions
really
in
just-
China that we do. Oh, go ahead, Tinger.
I was just saying I've only used it twice, and that was honestly just to troubleshoot a student's
Yeah.
project who was cut, and because of some reasons had to transition to something else, went to Resolve, and it had to do with hardware she didn't have, and so she ended up just using Final Cut to meet a deadline. CapCut to meet a deadline. I wasn't familiar with it, and she was trying to get CapCut to work like Final Cut, and she came up with it. She completed the project, but it was just really rough. We were just trying to figure out. But in the process, she actually kind of opened her eyes, like, hey, I've got this other tool that is actually pretty useful for me. I will say this much. I felt compelled to take a deeper look just to see what it's capable of doing, because she wasn't the only student who was turning to CapCut to get things done, despite that I actually require my students to use particular software for certain types of projects.
No, that's understandable. This isn't the only app that does it, but considering the fact that I have LumaFusion, I have Final Cut Pro, and I have the studio version of Resolve, I'm sorry, they're not. You're just not going to get permission to do that.
Right.
So speaking of that exact thing, here's how I compare those three: LumaFusion, Final Cut, and Resolve. LumaFusion is like a motorcycle if I'm going to go traveling. Final Cut's like a sports car, and Resolve is like a big pickup truck or even like a tank. Depending on what the job. I mean, the Resolve is really, really cool, but it's very complex, and it has all those different apps built into one. But, so like I said, Final Cut's a sports car, and then LumaFusion's like a motorcycle if you want to get going quick. But I like it. I like LumaFusion now, and I always have. But I like editing on the iPad, and now I've done 3 projects on it. I've only had the iPad Pro for a week, and I've already done 3 projects on it. I made myself stay in LumaFusion to finish completely, and it's really, really sophisticated. It's different than editing on Final Cut, as you can imagine, on a Mac. I still like the Mac better, but this is really, really cool.
One of
Don't
the things I
forget-
saw, Richard, that's compelling is watching 2 of my students use Final Cut and using their pen to draw. I actually was really impressed doing the live drawing in Final Cut and what they were creating with that I really couldn't do on the Mac. It really opened up a whole different type of expression in their creative work that, I've got this lab full of these iMacs, and yet these 2 students could do something that all students couldn't do on their iPad. That was pretty fascinating, and it looked amazing. I mean, it really was amazing.
I
initially
understand.
found myself a little jealous. I found myself a little jealous that I couldn't do that on the desktop, But that kind of in these 2 applications on 2 different platforms or 2 different pieces of hardware, using it in a unique way.
And what happened to Adobe last week? They stepped into it, didn't they? Changing
Yeah,
their
they
terms
got
of
in
service.
trouble.
Yeah, they got in big
That's 2
trouble.
weeks ago.
So
You
you don't get to control. You don't get to have access to everything I create, and you can do what you want with it worldwide, perpetually. No, you're not getting that. I'm not going to agree to that. So that's another
I don't
one.
think Adobe ever actually claimed that. I think a lot of the time there was overreaction to what people perceived Adobe were claiming, and regardless
Exactly.
of whether it's true or not, that was what the story became. I don't think that Adobe were particularly overreaching, but it was ambiguous, and people gave it the most nefarious interpretation, and that was the story, because that's a great story to spread
Right.
around. And now they have qualified, they have clarified the terms of service. It was a PR disaster, and probably you should not let the legal department rewrite terms of service without running it past marketing. And that's
Absolutely.
really all.
I
That's the
agree.
lesson. That's the lesson.
Chat,
Well, Philip, you
Chat
and Greg
GPT
have so many apps,
wrote
and
it.
you don't harvest anybody's personal information on any of your apps, right? I mean,
No,
you
not
and
at all.
Greg, and you have how many now? Something like 20?
I think it's about.
I've lost
It's
count.
about. Well, I just mentioned for the App Store, there's 9 in the App Store plus another 2 not in the App Store, 3 not in the App Store if you count next week's announcement, and the 5 Lumberjack apps. So yeah, it's
Wow.
close to 17 or 18, all maintained, I should say, by one, all been written by Greg and all maintained by Greg, and none of the text-based editors that have come into Resolve or into Premiere Pro are even close to what Lumberjack Builder was doing 5 years ago in 2018, 2019.
Right, right.
You know, the moment if you want to build a story for if you're just cleaning up a podcast where it's a linear story, one clip, that's fine. They'll be perfectly adequate for that. But if you're trying to build a story for multiple transcripts from multiple people, then nothing comes close to what Lumberjack Builder was doing 5 years ago.
Right.
And we went from bring your own transcripts to here's a industry lower cost transcription service that we at the time everyone else was charging 50 cents and up per minute. We came in at 35 cents. And then Whisper, the open source model, became available, and within a few weeks of Whisper becoming available, we implemented it into Builder, and so the people have been enjoying free transcripts there for 2 years almost now, and really high quality transcripts. So the natural price of transcription is free, sadly, for anybody who actually was running a transcription service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Jay, I would love to do a more Final Cut friendly and integrated version of TimeBolt. But the problem we've had in implementing that, and TimeBolt, for anyone who doesn't know, takes out the filler words automatically from your podcast. But every AI model that we have easy access to, actually already cleans out all of the filler words for you, so you don't have them in the transcript. You don't have the times where they occur, so you can't take them out of the actual media, out of the edit. So
I like
the frustrating
TimeBolt,
thing
but
is
if
that
you're
it's too
working
good.
if you're working in multicam, though, what happens with TimeBolt is they send you back, everything's married, and you can't separate it again. So you can't really use TimeBolt until you come to your final edit. I know we contacted them the other day because we were having a problem trying to figure that out. And so even though I love it, I don't really use it as much as I used to, because we're working mostly in multicam with 6-8 tracks of video and audio and everything. So but the idea is great. Philip, you have AI in some of your apps, and you're using it in a way that I think is really useful without overriding our human brain power. I think it would be interesting to mention that for a minute, if you don't mind, Richard.
Oh no, of course not. Of course not. That's fine.
Talk about.
Well, we're using, obviously the Whisper is an AI tool that we're using inside Builder, which I also used to generate subtitles, because that's just these I have access to.
What about Embiggen?
Embiggen and Picture This. In fact, it was a year ago or so. We in September we announced that on your show, Richard. Was Picture This, which was the image generator. You can actually set your prompts in the Final Cut Pro timeline, and then just run it as a batch, and we'll generate 3, 4, or 5, whatever you want, variations on your prompt, and deliver them back to your Final Cut Pro edit or Premiere Pro edit with in a Final Cut there'll be an audition, and so you can just scan through the variations and see which ones you like, or go through another cycle and find another set of variations. And part of that process is that we wanted to make sure that you had plenty of zoom room on the images, so we put a second AI into that app, which scales everything up 4 times larger. So we actually so we go to twice the size of your largest dimension of your timeline of your project. And so we decided to pull that out and make that a standalone app, and that's Embiggen. So when you're doing a documentary, you can do all of your moves and all of your grading and everything on a available quality, let's say, an image, and then when you're ready to upscale everything, you can run them through Embiggen, and all of those moves, all of the grading will be matched, but your images will now be 4 times the resolution. So these I think like color grading or AI-based color grading, these are tools that fill in roles that weren't going to be done otherwise or couldn't be done otherwise. I was never going to employ an illustrator to generate illustrations for a modest budget edit that I'm doing. Most of the time, you're not going to go out and pay an illustrator. You want to find some way of doing it in-house, or just doing it, or skipping it entirely, or using stock footage, which is always going to look like everyone else's stock footage. So these are ways of using AI to help that don't take away from the human creativity. Not that I think it ever does, because the best illustration is chess. Chess masters ruled chess, beat every computer until the day that they did it. What IBM Big Blue beat chess masters once, and from then on, the computer always beat the best of the chess masters. There is only one thing that can beat an AI chess program, and that is an AI working in conjunction with a human. The human bringing the creativity, the originality aspect that we're not going to get from the AI. The AI can replace that middle position. Better color grade than I will do with my primitive understanding of the tools, but nowhere near the job that a professional colorist would do. But in my entire career, I've never employed a professional colorist, so I would end up getting a better result, and nobody's going to lose their job over that.
Yeah, what you're doing is you're using AI as a creative assistant, and that's different than AI overriding what you would do. I mean, the other day I posted. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I don't think I'm not seeing a lot of tools that are saying AI is overriding. But tell me your use case.
Well, just a small thing that happened the other day. I posted a really short post about a lot of us are having problems with because we love the old Apple 27-inch cinema monitors, right? And my assistant tweaked the cable. So there's a short in the cable. It's been driving me crazy. And I'm searching, couldn't find a new cable, finally found a kit, but I'd have to take the entire monitor apart. And then it occurred to me, wait a minute, this is Thunderbolt, that's Thunderbolt. Why can't I just use Thunderbolt? And the cable worked. So I posted that, but then what happened, and it was a little annoying, and in some ways, I shouldn't say frightening because it wasn't that bad, but I get a post from Facebook to me saying, do you want to create an event around this? And they designed a user group event strictly around my one tiny little post about a Thunderbolt cable. And I thought, you AI just does not understand the complexities of technology the way the human brain can. So I think your point about marrying the two, Philip, is right on. You're always going to need a human being to edit what Chat GPT might say, right? If you use Chat GPT. So that's only what I was thinking with that.
So
I do wonder how many, with 10.8 now being released, and I'm looking at some of the comments, and as always, people want a lot more. But as we learned from the summit, like how, and especially with the AI, more AI features to come and neural engine, things like that, how many features that we've been wanting on your list, Richard, how many features have people wanted that Apple just hasn't done yet comparatively to other NLEs, simply because of that performance component? Richard, you said something a little bit earlier, just to kind of alluding to that as well. It's just, we learned that at the summit that in the case of, let's say, the scrolling timeline, why did it take this long to get that, right? And I think Philip, you alluded to that, that this similar kind of idea is, and I think Philip was you, of Apple not doing things until it's just right in the way that they want it, right? So I sometimes wonder now, when you said that, how many features that we all want really bad, maybe some they're just never going to do, and maybe there's some that are yet to come, simply because it just hasn't met the performance level that Apple wants and demands, no matter how often, how much we scream about it. And I don't use some of these features that people are screaming for enough in other applications to see whether or not, okay, the Resolve has it, but how well does it work consistently? And I will say that because there are things, I love Resolve, but as good as it is, it's not performant consistently for me with some of the features that people love about it. So, I do wonder now, is that what's holding Final Cut back sometimes? Is the technology just does not meet the performance level that Apple demands?
But why does it in other NLEs though? Why can other NLEs get the performance that Final Cut can't? I mean,
because
the ones.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if there's OS level issues there, I don't know how to answer. But sometimes I wonder, Richard, like if some other companies will say, "Hey, we're going to go ahead and build that feature in. It may not be perfectly, but it works, and we'll update it along the way." And Apple's more like all or nothing. It has to meet our very strict specifications to make this work, and the performance that we want in the way that we want it, or nobody's getting it.
Well, I think that's true. I think that's particularly true with collaboration. Not so much that the technology is there, but the simplicity of collaborating on a document is not going to meet or hasn't met Apple's desires for it yet. There are ways of collaborating by bin locking or doing things like Premiere Productions that will do the job fine if you are in an environment that where you have technology support, where you have IT support, or you're a particularly advanced user who understands the way the technology works. They are going to work just perfectly for you. But that's not empowering everybody to tell their story, which is Apple's primary goal.
And didn't Apple, the Final Cut Pro team, all of us were at the Creative Summit in 2023, and the Final Cut Pro team specifically said a couple of things. Number one is they singled out DaVinci Resolve and gave it a compliment during the Q&A. I thought that was really, really cool that they did that. I don't think even a question about them. We want to mention DaVinci Resolve. We think it's a really good NLE. The other thing they said is, we hear your comments and features that you want, but ultimately, we know Final Cut Pro the best, and we're going to update it on our schedule. So one of the things that you're not going to do is you're not going to force Final Cut Pro team to update things on your schedule. That's not going to happen. If you stick with Final Cut Pro, accept the fact that they're going to update it on their schedule. They know it the best. Is it frustrating? Sure. It's a little frustrating when we see, Philip's text-based editing's been out since 2018, and they still don't have it, and Premiere has it, and Avid has it, and now Blackmagic has it built in, right? Now,
but of course, until Apple can do it better than us, then there's no point in them doing it.
Let them buy you. Let them buy you and Greg.
But that begs the question.
From your lips to God's ears.
but that does beg the question. Why, like to your point, Richard, why can't they do it on in Final Cut now? How much better? Okay, now I'll give Apple. I don't know how many of us saw the getting rid of tracks and going roles based. I love that, and I don't want to leave that. But why can't they give that to us now? Like the hardware works. How much better are they going to make it? Certain features, it can only, maybe it'll be tremendously better. I don't know, maybe marginally. But you asked that very question, Richard. Like, why can't they do it? I think that's what we're all often stumped. The hardware can support it. The OS can support it. The frameworks can support it. So, or is it just for the community that Apple is tapping into? Is it just something that's not that valuable?
Final Cut on iPad that's taken away too many resources. Final Cut on Mac. I was surprised they don't have a separate Final Cut iPad team, or at least that doesn't take away from the Final Cut for Mac team. I was surprised to learn that no, this Final Cut for iPad is absolutely taken away from Final Cut from the Mac. I was kind of surprised.
But it's to do with the way that the teams work within Apple. Nothing is allowed to get to be too big a team without getting broken down. Um, and there's a lot of technologies that are overlapping between the two apps, even though they are quite different. So it makes no sense that iMovie, Final Cut, and Final Cut on iPad should be different teams and use entirely different technologies. They work together. They're under the leadership of one person who's responsible for all the video apps. They share a common vision and they share a common technology. So and it's reasonable that it takes a long time to train somebody up to take their position in that team. You not only need coding skills, but you also need video skills. We only get that because I have one half of the knowledge and Greg has the other half of the knowledge. And so we split that between us. Whereas, if you want to join the Apple team, you need both halves of that knowledge.
Okay.
And those people who are programming and cognizant of all of the little quirks of particularly NTSC or 60 hertz based video that just complicate that whole situation. So it becomes very difficult to train up for a team to just do the extra 2 years that we need them to kick off iPad for Final Cut. Strike that, reverse it. Final Cut for iPad. So they divert the resources. I would like to point out, though, comparing the Resolve team with the Final Cut team, the Final Cut team is somewhere around the 12 to 15 engineers, I believe, and they're doing 6 to 8 major features per year. So they're working deeply on that. The Resolve team has over 90 engineers working on it, and they're doing about the same number of features per engineer as Final Cut is, if you look at it that way, which most people do not.
No. Big difference.
Tangier, we're like the little kids asking their parents, why? Mother just goes, because I said so.
Yeah,
That was
but
never an acceptable answer.
that was at the summit. That was incredibly insightful just to hear that
Yeah.
From the team about wanting certain features. I'll say not arriving to Final Cut until it can be used in a way that matches Apple's performance goals. But I think we all kind of question that still, like when we're seeing other entities doing certain things.
An example back in the Final Cut Classic days, when we had the DV hack. Does anyone remember around Final Cut version 3? Somebody worked out that by hacking one of the hidden preference files, you could remove the performance limit that Apple had put on the performance of real-time effects at that time.
Yes.
And I had the dubious honor of demonstrating the DV hack in front of the Final Cut Pro product manager of the day. That was not a moment I'm particularly happy about in hindsight. But the following version, when it was obvious that people preferred the performance over the quality, Apple actually backtracked and they made the DV hack legitimate by having a sort of higher performance, lower quality mode, which I will point out is still in Final Cut to this day. There is only a choice between performance and quality. There is not. I have my still image can be at anything between 1:1 or 1:64, and my moving image can be 1:4 or 1:16 or reduced resolution as they do in Premiere. Flexibility is great, but you have to have a certain level of knowledge to make that flexibility available to you. And I think that's the big difference between Resolve and Premiere and other tools, is that they expect the user to have a high degree of technical skill in order to operate their software. And Apple comes from the other side and says, how much power can we give people who have no technical skill? Way broad way broad.
And that's echoes in my classroom, generally between juniors and seniors, and generally they want to use Final Cut because they can do more with it faster and experiment and play. But what ends up happening is when it comes time to work outside the classroom and they have to make a decision, particularly those who don't have Apple computers, have to make a decision. How can I manage all my other classes and do this edit? Well, I'm not going to buy the software, whether it's Education, whether it's, DaVinci Resolve Studio. It ultimately boils down to, well, hey, DaVinci Resolve free, I can be Mac in the classroom and be PC at home, and I can get it done. But ultimately, they want to work in Final Cut. Most of them, not all, most of them, though.
Boy, you hit a sore spot with me with our high school and college user groups. I'm running into school districts that use Chromebooks all the time, and it's
We do.
we work with Final Cut and Resolve primarily, and that's really tough. And what do? You have to rent
Yeah.
equipment when you go in to do a tutorial or to do workshops because they don't have Apple computers or Mac computers.
Or use
We're the same.
LumaFusion. LumaFusion runs on the Chromebooks.
Yeah, but we're sponsored by our user groups are sponsored. Our title sponsor is Blackmagic, and we work a lot with Apple on our events. So I can't bring Chromebooks into those particular meetings. So,
No.
but
From what I
absolutely, if we're demoing LumaFusion, it's no problem.
What I understand is, though, the Chromebooks are really, really, Tangier, I think you said that, they're really, really, the performance is really poor.
Oh yeah, we're in the same boat. Our school uses Chromebooks that we have in a lot of the classrooms, and students can take them home and things like that. I have literally a handful of MacBook Pros that I'm able to give students for some of the bigger projects so they can take it home. But generally, most of the work is done in class intentionally, so that because a lot of students may not have these resources. But the Chromebooks just won't work. We can't. That's just not an option. So if students have if students have Windows computers, then they go to Resolve. So that way they usually work in the classroom on iMacs, or unless they have their own laptop, or they just use Resolve. Then they'll take it back home and use Resolve at home. That way they can go back and forth.
Right.
Even though they want to use Final Cut. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Brett, you have some new plugins. Came out.
The Power Guides?
Yeah. Tell us about that.
It's old. It's just an update, really. Just kind of updated the interface, added a few features. I don't know. It's kind of utilitarian and cheap.
You're not a very good salesperson, Brett.
Brett, tell us what
I'm
it is
trying to give
first.
you a little plug here.
You're very
Power
modest.
Guides, I was trying. Well, when you're in motion, you've got grids and custom guides, film guides, film zones, all kinds of tools, which I never understood why, and rulers. Like, you put the guide, kind of like Photoshop, where it shows, what pixel you're at and everything for the guide. I never understood why that wasn't in Final Cut. So a few years ago, I just kind of made like a little guides plugin that just had. It's pretty simple, really. I mean, it's a grid and guide. It's just useful, I guess, is the best way to put it, for aligning your text or laying out a grid of picture in picture or something like that.
So one of the things about your Power Guides 2.0, it's only $10.
Yeah,
it's like you can't even afford to buy me a coffee for that when we get to the summit next year. That's not. I mean, it's only like 2 coffees. Now, the other thing that you did recently,
black coffee,
Brett, is you took the maps from iMovie and ported them over to Final Cut Pro. And not only did you do that, you got it on the App Store.
I don't think they know about that yet.
Oh, they would know. They would know. They're very thorough. Trust me. We've been
they were, Philip. It was originally called. Well, I sell it on my site too. Call it iMovie Maps.
Right.
So I was calling it iMovie Maps, and the first thing they rejected was, no, you can't put iMovie in the name.
Okay.
And then another rejection, they said something like, I forget something, but it was all kind of, maybe the description said something like the same. Very clear. I'm like, these are the same maps in iMovie that we don't have in Final Cut. And I had to jump through some hoops. In fact, Chris Hocking helped me figure out the code to get the language in there. So I was going to give it away. I was just going to do it for free, but you can't make it work because there's language localizations. And there was no way to make it automatically do a language. So we just made a version for 7 different languages. So when you got it in Final Cut, you've got, Chinese, Korean, German, French, that sort of thing. The way they're doing it, when you export it from iMovie to Final Cut, it automatically builds, it inserts, it creates some JPEGs in the background, for the language, for like, the continents and the oceans and that sort of thing. So it was kind of I couldn't quite figure it out, and Chris Hawkins said, "Well, let me look at it," and then he kind of dug in and he kind of figured it out, and helped me make an installer to put it on the App Store. That was his suggestion. He's like, "Yeah, try to put it on the App Store." I'm like, "They're not going to let that happen."
I didn't think so either. I was well. I guess people have been asking for this for years. That's nothing, is it, Phil?
We went through that in 4 days this last week.
Yeah. And then the power guides I put on the App Store too, but you can get it on the my store as well. But that went through that was interesting. It went through one rejection, and they just said, "We don't see it in the Final Cut Titles browser," and they sent that to make it short. They didn't say it that clearly, and I was like, "What?" And then I was like, "Well, maybe I messed up the installer or whatever." And then they sent a screenshot, and they hadn't twirled open the titles in the browser. It just said, and I just kind of went, "Okay, you got to twirl the little triangle open, and then you'll see it."
Disclosure triangle, right?
That's all I replied back. It's kind of like, it's like you say something's installed in a folder, and somebody sends you a screenshot of the folder, not the insides of it, and says, "Where is it?" And you're like, "Really?" So I don't know. I just kind of, so the team is very good at looking at all the code, but I'm not sure how good they are at Final Cut, because that's kind of different to having. There's not a whole lot of plugins on the App Store. There's a lot of like Chris Hawkins and Phillips apps and stuff. A lot of like add-on tools, to use.
Right.
But there's not that many plugins on there, so. Because you have to make, like on my website, I can just make an installer, from Digital Rebellion, one of these, or a package installer or something. But on the App Store, you have to make an actual application. Like you have to know how to code, which I do not. So the installers you see, I'm pretty sure are the one Chris made for me. It looks a lot like, his MetaBurner installer or something like that.
Right.
I think he's basically got a chunk of code, and he says, "Hey, now you can just change the code and put your other plugins up there." I'm like, "Well, I might," and so I did. I put Power Guides up there.
There you go.
Cool.
I don't know. That was really nice of him to help out, though.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Definitely,
He's very helpful.
But there were too many Aussies at the Creative Summit, don't you think? Proportionally,
there were too many.
Yeah. There too many.
Not counting you, Phil, because you live in the United States now. Not counting you and Greg. But the rest of them, it takes 19 hours of travel to get here, to get over here.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. I always say it's 24 hours shower to shower.
And it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's very expensive. So speaking of the Creative Summit, there is going to be a Creative Summit in 2024. I can't give any specific details. That's completely up to future media conferences. But there is going to be a Creative Summit in November in 2024. Probably similar to the same thing that happened last time. I don't know what hotel or anything like that. That's completely up to future media conferences to make an announcement. But I am allowed to hint at it, is what I was told. I can hint. So there is going to be one, so that's pretty cool.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that event.
I do too. My favorite event of the year.
Good.
I get to see all you. I met Brett for the first time. I've known Tangier online, and he got to come last time. And then, of course, Philip and Serena, we've been friends for years, in person and online, of course.
Well, I met all four of y'all.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, the tech community,
briefly.
it's a wonderful camaraderie between everyone who works on the back end of tech. It's really nice. You know, like Brett, you were getting help from Chris and Philip.
Yeah.
You and Greg work together, and when I have a problem, there's so many people I can call that are. And Richard and Tangier, you guys have always jumped in. I'm having trouble with this. You know, because I started out as a predator. Really, I was a writer, producer, director, and working with editors. But as I entered into the Final Cut community, I had to learn pretty much on my own. But you guys have always been there, and I love that part of this. That's
And
awesome.
Serena, now don't
Yes,
forget,
sir.
who took care of me getting half and half for my coffee at the
That's
last Creator
right.
Summit?
I,
You and your
I,
Tesla, we rode around till we found cream coffee. It was quite an adventure. I really liked that. That was a lot of fun. It's a highlight of my Creative Summit adventures last year.
the
Actually,
coffee
Serena,
cream
was that-
adventure.
It
Well, we
was
know
really
where to go
weird.
next
Serena.
year.
What store was
What?
that in? What store was that in? that
Didn't
found
we
it?
end up at like Walmart or Target or something?
At
Really
Target.
unusual.
So
Target.
Here's the weird thing. This is very strange. We go to Target. We go to the milk section. I'm looking. I mean, rows and rows and rows and rows. No half and half. I said, "You've got to be not." It wasn't empty. There was no space for half and half in the entire milk section.
Yep.
All kinds of soy milks and latte, whatever the milks are, soy milk and this milk and that, and it wasn't there. And some guy that was shopping heard me and Serena saying, "This is incredible. They don't have half and half." He goes, "Oh, it's over here. It's in a completely different section," and it was right around the corner from. And then that's where it was. That doesn't. To me, that's so bizarre. They don't have it with the milk, but they didn't. But we did get it. We did get
That's
it. 'Cause
kind of a metaphor for people who design technology but never ask the user base to beta test what they're designing. And so somebody that designed that store layout didn't ask the customers, where do you go when you want to find half and half? So
Yeah, absolutely.
but that was fun.
That was the first time I'd met you in person at the
Well,
summit.
There's certain stuff at the
Yeah.
grocery store that you try to find, and it's only like in the international section.
Ah,
Why? You're like, why? What, a little baby corn?
What? Really?
Like, you know, the little baby corn. I swear,
because
you can
it's
only
used
find
to-
it
Oh
in the-
yeah, yeah.
It's used in
International
Chinese
section's
cooking.
like-
So.
Yeah, it's like that seems wrong. Like it should be in both, just vegetables and international, I guess.
well,
By the
they
way,
should.
have you guys seen Jane's garden? Richard, tell them about Jane's garden. I was thinking about her this morning because my daughter gave me one of those
Oh, that's
tomato plants that grows in your house. You know, those like the arrow plants you can get. This tomato plant is like 2 feet huge. I don't even know where to put it. But I was thinking about Jane and Jane's garden.
my girlfriend's name is Jane. We're partners, life partners, and she absolutely loves gardening.
Which is amazing.
We do Jane's Garden World on Facebook. You can look it up, Jane's Garden World. And the videos get like 2,000 and 3,000 views whenever we put them up. She's really good on camera. Of course, she's been trained by me. I say, don't do this, don't do that, because I'm, we're right there. I give her a DJI mic. The audio is pristine.
It is.
And then I use my iPhone on a gimbal. And we go film it. And I edited the last one on LumaFusion. But she has a really good following on Facebook. So, but it's all about tomatoes and planting and stuff. I mean, she just does it she really enjoys it, and the passion comes through. So before we finish up here, we still have more time. I have to do this. Okay, now we have to give Final Cut Pro team applause, please.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll give them some balloons here too. Thank you so much. happy birthday, Final Cut Pro, right?
Happy birthday.
Tomorrow is the birthday. Now, I have a question. They've never released an update to Final Cut Pro on Final Cut Pro's birthday. Never. In the history of Final Cut releases, for 10, I mean.
Okay.
Do we count this one as one since it's only a few hours before the 21st? I don't know.
I think we can allow that.
Okay, so we'll say this is the first one, 10.8. They released it. They gave it a little early birthday present. By the way, they gave us the birthday present. We're wishing them happy birthday. They gave the birthday present to us by putting out Final Cut Pro 10.8. And the reason I'm so big and everybody else is in the corners is because I can't, this only comes on my camera. When I have everybody on screen, it's only on my camera. So I made this one.
I feel like we should do some sort of Brady Bunch impression.
I was thinking the same thing.
Absolutely. So, Philip, let's talk about you mentioned your products that you and Greg have out right now.
Well, actually,
Current
I could cheat now. Current ones. Well, there's the translation tools, of course, 10 to 10 and 10 to 7. Then there's the reporting tool, Sequence Clip Reporter for track-based reporting, Producer's Best Friend for Final Cut 10 reporting. There's Reading is Fundamental, so that you can open any document inside a Final Cut Pro workflow extension.
I like
which we
that
can
one a
copy
lot.
from it.
Yep.
Yeah. Creator's Best Friend, which is simply takes the chapter markers from your project and converts them to a format that YouTube can use to create chapters in YouTube. Embiggen is, as we mentioned earlier, it scales everything up 4 times, so while retaining all of your scaling and other effects. Picture This is for generating new images from prompts in your Final Cut Pro project. I feel I'm missing something.
Did you mention Builder?
Well, that's in the Lumberjack side. In the Lumberjack, there is Builder, Builder, the live logger on iOS, Backlogger for logging existing footage, Note Logger, which has been used a lot in Danish television, shows up as many as 100 cameras, where you can actually create more extensive notes. It's a logging tool, but it's at a keyboard rather than on an iOS device. And then next week there'll be another one called Chat FCP.
Is that right? Is this
Interesting.
a worldwide announcement?
All right.
And it would be the first anyone outside the Serena in the building would have known about it, yes. Yeah. That's what we've had some challenges with the Mac App Store, because there is no way of loading in the ChatGPT engine without the possibility of finding a link somewhere where they might ask you to pay. And because of that, we can't use the Mac App Store. We cannot find a way of working around that. So Greg has had to completely rebuild into Swift code our entire registration process. So that we've had one that we've been working, but it won't. We want to update it going forward. So that will bring us.
Nice.
It's not only ChatGPT. You can actually go to the app itself and select which engine you want, or even put in a custom URL. If for example, were using an engine that's specific to your organization.
Philip, Greg's not busy. He has time to do all this stuff.
These are the things I get to talk about. But what happens behind the scenes is, apps get to a certain age, so we now have to rethink, consider what we're going to do in the future. When we first did the translation tools, our expectation was that they were, one-way escapes. People who went to Final Cut Pro 10 decided it wasn't for them at the moment, wanted to go back and take their work with them. People who work with Final Cut but have to collaborate with people who work on a timeline-based tool. So they were designed for a different purpose. Well, we started rewriting them last year. Then we discovered, somewhat like Final Cut Pro did a decade or 13 years ago, that we needed to actually reconceive what those apps would be in a more modern context. These are now workflow apps. They're now designed to go between them. And of course, we have to take into account the fact that increasingly Open Timeline I/O is becoming an interchange format that will be supported more widely. There is some fundamental support in Resolve already. Adobe, I know, are very keen on it internally. I don't think they've made any public announcements. And Avid have made public announcements that they are going to go to that direction in the future. So we'll be supporting that, converting Open Timeline to and from Final Cut as well, because we've had to reconceive the way it's written, the way it's created, using and incorporate all the knowledge we've gained over the last 13 years. It's every time I create it, I have an idea for a new app and take Greg's time to create it. It's like, you're taking me away from other things that are also important but less urgent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's always a balance about moving forward and also keeping the foundations up to date as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I'm
you know
curious
what's
about
interesting? They did a second newsroom about the releases of Final Cut and for Mac. This is the second newsroom release they've had about it. They put a new one out today. So new versions of Final Cut Pro for iPad. And where is it? Oh, there it is, right there. So everything there was people were saying, well, as a matter of fact, I kept correcting people and saying that people kept saying that Final Cut Pro 10.8, they said they were going to release it by the end of spring, and I said, no, they never said that. They did not say Final Cut Pro 10.8 was going to be released. They just said Final Cut on iPad and Final Cut Cam was going to be released. Now, was that just like a typo on the website? Maybe. But I said there's no way they can release Final Cut on iPad 2 and not release Final Cut 10.8 on the Mac at the same time. So here we are. And we were the
Felt
first.
like they just didn't commit. They didn't want to commit to it coming.
No, I just don't. I don't see them releasing Final Cut iPad 2 and not releasing Final Cut Pro 10.8. I can't see that. Now, here's one thing before we finish up here. It seems to me, let me get all your opinions, that Final Cut Pro on the Mac and Final Cut iPad are doing this.
Yeah.
There's different, from the subscription model to the touch interface to the live multicam to the ability to write on screen. And it seems like they're doing this. Yeah. Going in different directions.
I'll throw the question the other way. Right? I was going to throw the question the other way. Is there any reason why they should be the same?
No.
I mean, one is if you're going to leverage the benefits of both platforms, then they have to take some deviation going on.
No, I agree. Absolutely agree. Just for, Final Cut for iPad, I don't like the subscription model. I don't care that it's only $5. And I'm not talking about small developers, Philip, like you guys. I buy a lot of your apps. But, like Ecamm Live, it's a subscription. Apple, do they need $5 a month from me? Do they really? I mean,
Well, Apple's published reason is so that there can be a very accessible price rather than having a $99 or $150 buyout price. It really, the cost of entry is only $5 because that's all you need to be able to edit and tell your story over the next month. So that was the justification. I agree. As a company, they do not need my $5 a month.
Well, why not do both? Yeah. Why not have a subscription for $5.99, $4.99, and give us the ability to buy it for, if we wanted to, for $99? I would buy it. I would buy it for sure.
The only reason is because somebody made that decision. Because the only limitation, it would have to be two separate apps in the App Store. Would it? Yes, I think it would. Based on my understanding, I think it would have to be two apps. Apple Final Cut for iPad subscription, Final Cut Pro for iPad lifetime.
Okay. Well, I think they can figure that out.
But that's not a big deal. I mean, you're smart enough to work out which one you want.
Yeah, I think that Apple could figure that out, how to take care of that.
Yeah.
Somehow, Affinity, how did they figure that out? I mean, well, they they said they weren't gonna charge for any updates, and then they said version 2. I think they just called it something else, and so we had to rebuy version 2. But you could buy it on their website, and it's somehow linked in with the like I can update it on the App Store. Affinity Photo 2 and Designer 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think I bought it on the App
Interesting,
Store,
yeah.
but then of course somehow I don't know, you bought it and then maybe there was a code. I can't remember. It was a year or so ago, but it
I don't know.
they're like connected somehow. I don't know how they're doing that.
Yeah.
Neither do I.
Well, Philip, I had to
I'm just-
prove that I'm not making $1 million, so I could get the small developer on the.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, we also had to prove that.
No, it took them like a month too. It took them a long time.
What'd you show them your tax returns? What did they ask for?
I mean,
Firstborn.
they already had my LLC and Dunn's number and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. You just had to answer a little questionnaire. It wasn't that much.
Okay.
But
Speaking of that, I'm not a millionaire by any stretch of the imagination, but I am making hundreds on YouTube now. I'm making hundreds on YouTube. Yes. Which, look, I never intended to do that. They contacted me 3 or 4 months ago and said, "Hey, you're going to reach 500,000 views on your channel. You should consider monetizing." I said, "Okay, I'll do it." Jump through the hoops, and so now I'm making hundreds. So
good for you.
yeah,
That's good.
Yeah.
As an indication,
Have you heard of
why
Storyworth? Have you heard of Storyworth? The company
What's
that buys your Storyworth buys your, or they buy the license to be able to sell your little videos that you capture. And I did a video when I was going over to the Amazon for the clown convention, and there were clowns playing music. These are doctors that go in and they help people for free. I made $5,000 on that little tiny clip.
Wow.
In just a few months. I know, that was a lot of money.
That's great.
Wow.
So if you're shooting something, you'll see a lot. If you look closely at the very popular videos on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, you'll see the Storyworth copyright on some of them.
Very, very interesting.
Never heard of that. Mm-hmm.
So normally the summertime is the slowest time for Final Cut Pro. Probably a lot of posts. It's slow. Dog days of summer, they call it. This is kicking off the summer, which starts tomorrow, with 10.8. And then after that, we're going to have news about the Final Cut Pro Creative Summer for 2024 sometime, later this month or July. We should have information for that. So that'll be exciting as well.
There's a
It will.
I don't know, Richard, if you have a certain destination you go to, or either of you, but there's as we're kicking off summer, kind of, Richard, you talked about the span between time release dates. So FCP Cafe has in the release notes, you can see the list of each version, how many days between the release date, which macOS version, and thankfully the FX plug version, so we don't break things accidentally.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we get surprised, don't we? So back up your copy of Final Cut Pro before you press that 10.8 button. That's all I got to say. I've been saying it for a week. I said, now's a good time to back up Final Cut Pro. And I usually post a link to the article, the Apple article about it. So,
Yeah.
If you want an
Alrighty.
indication,
Go ahead.
indication of why Final Cut for iPad is a different product from Final Cut Pro for Mac OS, you have to consider that I read recently that something like 4 million people are expected to earn $100,000 a year or more off YouTube and TikTok alone. And by way of sort of comparison, that's about twice the salary of the average school teacher in the United States and about twice people as teach school in the United States. And they would be much more likely to be Final Cut Pro for iPad people, or CapCut. I'd say majority were CapCut. But that's a lot of people making relatively a lot of money.
right. No,
Yeah.
I completely understand that. the views on YouTube. I mean, I follow Casey Neistat, if you guys know who he is. I've been following him for years. Nothing to do with Final Cut. And he said he didn't even start considering monetizing until he had a million subscribers. He didn't even enter his head. He's a pretty incredible guy. And he was doing a marathon in his late 20s. And he was determined to beat this time, this one for the marathon one time. He beat it. He never gave up, and he beat it at age 45, finally. It was just self-imposed, but he never gave up, and beat it when he was 45. So,
what's going to happen to YouTube now that Elon Musk has it?
He doesn't have it.
Wait, what?
$400 million. 400. He just did a deal with YouTube. Yeah.
Oh,
Let's
deal.
Google it.
No, he didn't buy
YouTube.
But
hang on a minute. Let's look it up, because
given that Google bought it for $3 billion 15 years ago.
Hang on a minute.
It's worth a little bit more.
YouTube.
He may have worked out a deal with them, but
he worked out a big deal with them, and he's going to be in there affecting how all of that works. Yeah, maybe I'm not supposed to say anything.
Well, if it's
Elon Musk's new 4 billion, what is this, 40?
On YouTube? That's amazing. I didn't.
Yeah.
They're
Elon
owned by
Musk, YouTube.
Alphabet or Google, so
The Google, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I don't have the details. I just was talking to somebody yesterday about this and wondering what's going to happen to YouTube now that he's in there.
Serena, don't answer your door tonight. Somebody knocks on your door, don't answer. That's a spice.
I'm probably in trouble. Am I in trouble?
Tesla shareholders to vote on
Buy
Elon Musk's
YouTube. Buy YouTube stock. Oh my God, my screen where I was searching that just disappeared.
There you go. I'm telling you, do not answer your door tonight.
Oh my God.
All right.
YouTube.
Anything else? In closing, do anything else you want to say?
Thank you for doing this, Richard.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I expect to see all you at the Creative Summit this year. Everyone,
Yep.
no excuses. No excuses.
how many were at the summit? 500 or so?
No, not that
No, it was
many.
about 150, I think, including presenters and crew.
It's always been the same.
150? No,
Yeah.
it's more than that.
It might be 100. It's not that
small.
much. It's never been that much. I mean, it's always been in that it's 150 plus some staff. I don't know what the peculiars are, but it's never been that many. It used to be $1,000 to get in.
Yep.
Okay, so that limited it there. Last year it was $299 because they got financial support from Apple and some other companies, so they could keep the price way, way down, and that's much, much better. Now, I hope, I don't know anything about this, I hope we're going back to the Juniper or another hotel that's closer to Cupertino, so there's not that 1 mile distance, whatever. But regardless, it all worked last time. Just took some Ubers and walked, and Serena with her Tesla driving me around back and forth and getting coffee and stuff. It worked out really, really well.
Somehow I avoided walking the whole time.
I just love that event. I love
saw
it.
you hanging
Couple
on to a
Ubers.
trunk of an Uber a couple of times there, Brett. Hanging on the roof and going up.
Well,
the
you wouldn't
road.
you wouldn't let me in.
Oh, I always let you in. I let everybody in. I say, hey, come on, I already paid for it. Come on in, jump in my Uber. But
Every morning I was like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna walk or whatever. And then somebody's like, oh, I got an Uber or I got a rental car or whatever. So I'm like, okay.
there you go.
How long did you ever walk it, Philip? You said beforehand
I
you were
walked
going
a
to walk
few.
it
I
every
walked a few
morning.
times.
You
Yeah,
walked
we
it?
worked it a couple of
Yeah.
times. Yeah.
So
it was like a
looks
mile
like
or so, right?
looks
1
like
mile.
Elon is a rumor. Elon's just a rumor, but he did invest in it in a big way. So he didn't buy it out and out. I don't think he would do that, but he's in there now.
No,
Somehow.
there's something
Seeing
going
it.
on. Yeah, there's something definitely.
Yeah.
Can you buy
or at
YouTube
least seemingly. seemingly.
I'm not going to answer my
Well,
door
it's
tonight.
Google. You don't answer your door. Keep your dog barking if you hear any knocking on your door.
Wow.
Thanks, each and every one of you, for coming on the show today. Absolutely appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at each one of you at the Creative Summit, and it'll be in November. We'll see
Apple.
how
Apple campus.
I would say it's going to be, yes, like last year. Two suggestions because the Final Cut Pro Team watches, I don't know how much they schedule at Apple, probably none, and Future Media conferences. Two suggestions. Give us a tour inside the building. We don't need a garden tour 2 years in a row, okay? That was nice, but give us a tour inside the building, right? We don't get to, it was nice. Get us into Tim Cook's office. That's where we want to go.
That's just, that's all.
I thought we were teasing Brad about going into Tim Cook's office last year. Remember that?
We were. So here's the other thing. And Brad Olson, speaking of Brad, mentioned this last time. Even though the Apple campus was really, we're all excited about that, One Infinite Loop had a better presentation for the Final Cut Pro team because it was in a theater. And people in the back, it had theater seating, so people in the back could see everything on stage. Brad said because we were in just like an office space, whatever that was, and it was flat, he couldn't see half of the screen when they did the presentation.
Oh, yeah.
So put us in Steve Jobs Theater. We don't care if it's empty. We're there for Final Cut Pro and the Final Cut Pro team. Put us in a theater setting. I don't know if there's another theater on campus or not. Put us in Steve Jobs Theater to do the presentation so we have an inclined situation where we can see everybody in the back. And I was up front with Serena. I mean, I was right up front. So
we're in the front row.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love the sound in the theater too, in the real theater. It's wonderful.
So that was
and the seats
only
are cushy.
Suggestion that I would make to the Final Cut Pro team, people at Apple, Future Media Concepts. Now, of course, Future Media has probably no control over that. It's all up Apple. So let's hope.
I want to get up on the roof.
That and lighting for the at the hotel for the guests, because the lighting was really dark.
Some of
in the meetings,
not all of them.
Yes,
not all of
in the
them,
meetings,
but
yeah.
Tangier, that's been that way forever. I bought a Lumix S5 Mark IIX specifically to get better lighting, to film in the dark in those presentations.
That's right.
I don't know. Some of the presenters had lights on and some of them didn't. I don't know if it was their choice or what it was. But no, they need auxiliary stage lighting, not just the lights from overhead. Just a couple of lights, lamps, high-powered lamps to do there.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be fun. So I'll see you guys at the Creative Summit, if not.
At the Creative Summit. See you.
Yeah.
If not before. Bye.
Absolutely. No excuses. Everybody's supposed to be there. And we have what were you saying?
Would not miss it.
Absolutely. It's our favorite event of the year. Now, Brad, it was your first time?
Yeah.
And
in
Tangier.
person. Yeah, obviously I've been online a couple of it.
Yeah.
That one. There was the one in Studio City here. It was
Oh, they're on the road show, yeah.
That wasn't a Creative Summit.
Oh, in there.
That wasn't a
summit.
summit.
That wasn't Creative Summit, but that
was not a summit. It was the road show. When that first announced, I said, that's not a summit. I said, that's not a summit. I'm sorry. A summit is one place at one time. Everybody gets together one place one time. That is not, you don't divide it up by 10 and call that a summit. But anyway, that's fine. During the COVID, the aftermath, they tried it out. It didn't work out so well. So.
Yeah.
Let's
I'm
all
hoping,
talk ahead of time
Philip
and find a
gives us a
night to
copy.
do a really fun dinner, though. We should just
Absolutely.
get together to have a fun, informal dinner somewhere close where we can
if we're back in Cupertino, the Juniper, whatever, Philip and you and I and Greg and I think Brad, we ate at that Italian restaurant a couple years in a row. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Walking
Yeah,
distance.
and there was good pho too nearby. What was that restaurant where we got pho? That was good. I think we're all talking about food because it's almost
It's coming up to
here.
lunch for us on the West Coast. I'm going to go. Thanks, guys.
All right, you guys.
Thank you very
All
much,
righty.
everybody.
You all
Bye.
take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank
Serena,
you.
Thanks,
we'll reach out.
Richard. Bye.